Do you think there's possible to live life without facing grief, without facing pain, without meeting people that treat you badly? And the answer I got so far is no. What makes some people rise and some of them be stuck to this and have a miserable life?
I mean, the most inspirational thing I've seen is Guruji, because he takes everyone. Like sometimes the people around him, I'm just like, really? But amazingly, because of his unrelenting belief, they start one place where you think there's no roadmap to this person becoming something better and different. And amazingly, they do. It's just, it's a project. How do we unlock you?
Oh man, this is amazing. Yeah.
Jai Gurudev, Ojasvi Das.
Jai Gurudev, Swami. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. So Ojasvi Das is from Brazil. This is another podcast between two Brazilians that we're going to speak in English after Preto.
Exactly.
But so I want to talk a little bit about, first of all, who you are and your background and how you came into Bhakti Marga. We've known each other for a few years now, and I think you've got a really unique, interesting background, not often found, let's put it like this, in Bhakti Marga. And so I'd like to hear from you, and then we can take it from there.
Okay. At first, I'd like to apologize because my English is definitely not very good. But I'm happy because if I can't find any word, I'm going to ask you in Portuguese and you help me out. So it's going to be perfect. So I was born in Brazil, and pretty normal life. I studied law, worked as a lawyer for about 15 years. Then I was profoundly unhappy with my career, my life, professionally speaking. And I looked for a coach. So the idea was to look into my professional life and try to find ways to find things that would fill me with meaning and purpose, something like this. And from this work we did together, I changed my career completely. I founded a small company, and now we offer trainings for companies, mostly big companies around the world, on topics like leadership, communication, mindfulness, and communication, team building, these kind of things. Mm-hmm. And how I came to Bhakti Marga, I'd like to go a little bit back, please, because I think I can divide my spiritual life into three important moments. Yeah. The first one was when I was a little boy. I had this neighbor, and we became friends. We've known each other for more than 40 years now. He's still a good friend of mine. And their parents, they were spiritists. Mm-hmm. You know,
mm-hmm. In Brazil, it's super common. Yeah,
it's super common. They would follow the Allan Kardec's philosophy, and it was a very important moment in my life because I was like 10, 11 years old, and for the first time I came across with the concept of reincarnation, which was very important because I was already asking myself, is this all about like life, death, meaning the end? Mm-hmm. And these questions were popping out. So the idea of reincarnation was very important and brought me so much peace, Then the idea of karma, which also was very important to realize that our current life somehow is connected to our actions and lives. It made completely sense for me. And also in a very, in the beginning, but the idea of karma yoga, because the spiritists believe that the best way to serve God is through action, serving other people, serving those in need in a very detached way, in a very humble way, which was very nice. You see that action can be done in a less self-interested way. Yeah. You can serve others. Yeah. So it was very important. And also because the first time I had this idea of having that there are people that have like, not powers, but the idea of a spiritual teacher or master. Because the main figure in Spiritism in Brazil is someone called, he's not alive anymore, Chico Xavier, Francisco Xavier. Yeah. And I had a very nice experience with him, if I can share.
Please, absolutely.
So I was like 15, 16 years old, 17 maybe, I don't remember. And I had a huge fight with my mom. And I was very upset, very angry. I went to my room and I, crying because it was very intensive. And I fell asleep. And when I opened my eyes in the dream, I was lying on the lap of Chico, Francisco. And I was lying. He was above me, and I looked at him, and I started complaining, like, Shiku, my mom, she's this, she's doing this and this and this. What should I do? And he would answer only with one word, like, forgive. And when he said that word, it's like a waterfall of blessings. Like, oh, no, Shiku, you don't understand. My mom, man, she's been doing this and this and this. She does not respect. Mom, if you're watching this, sorry, it's in the past. And she's been doing this. What should I do, Shiku? And love. And after 3 times of this, I was in a very different state, and I said, "Oh, Shiku, I love you so much. I really would love to meet you someday." And in the dream, he said, "Why don't you come and see me?" And I woke up, Revati, with this feeling, the smell, the touch, and it was very real. And I woke up and I said, "Man, he invited me to come." So I go. So I woke up like 20 minutes later, went to my mom in a different state. "I love you, sorry for everything." She couldn't understand that thing. And I went to the bus station, the big one. Yeah. And I got a bus to Uberaba, which is the city where he used to live, like 7 hours from São Paulo. So I spent the night traveling, and I came to Uberaba in the next morning. So I went to a very cheap hotel, and I checked in, and I went to breakfast. Mm-hmm. And then I called the waiter, and I said, "I'm here to see Shiku. How can I do it?" And he started laughing. He went, "You and 3,000 people." And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Shiku is very sick already, and he gathers with his people only once a month, which is tomorrow, Sunday. It was a Friday. I was on Saturday, which is tomorrow. So we have buses from all over the country. We have thousands of people. So if you really want to try to see him or to talk to him, you should go to the line right now, spend the day, the night on the line, and maybe tomorrow you have a chance to talk to him." Wow. And in my heart, I said, I felt it's not this. So I was having breakfast, trying to figure out what to do. And then I see someone coming to the restaurant, which was my mom manicure. Is it correct?
Yeah, the person who does manicure. Yeah.
Manicure, in the saloon. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And she looked at me and said, "Tony, what are you doing here?" And I said, "What are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm a spiritist." "Oh, well, that's nice." And she said, "I'm here because we have this work that we do with sick people in the hospitals, everything. And we are about to leave to visit them. Would you like to come with us?" And I said, maybe that's why Shiku asked me to come, so I could have this experience. I said, yes, I'd love to. So we went out, and we spent the day visiting sick people, orphans, and elders. And it was a beautiful experience to see people suffering in unimaginable, situations, and seeing them handling life with a positive outcome, positive view. And I had an amazing day. So it was 7 at night on the Saturday. We went back to the hotel, and I thanked her, and I said, "Man, I thank you so much for this day." And I went to my room, not knowing what to do the next day.
Right.
2 minutes later, someone knocks on my door. I open up. It's she again. And she said, "Since I saw you this morning, I have this thought in my message. You should invite him." And I said, "Invite him?" I'm a manicure as well of the adoptive wife's Shiku's son. Mm-hmm. Shiku had an adopted son. Okay. He had a wife, and she
She's doing manicure for the wife.
She did manicure for the wife. Yeah. And because of that, I have access to the room where Shiku is going to be tomorrow, like 15 people. "Would you like to come?" And I goosebumps. Oh my God, yes, I'd love to. So tomorrow, be ready at 9 a.m. and we go there. And I was to bed with this feeling, not knowing what was happening. 2 days before I was having a dream, and then I travel all night and I visit that place, the people, and now I'm going to see you tomorrow. Then we go, and Revati was 2,000, 3,000 people, the police officers working together to put people in the right place, and we go through the crowd, and then we enter in a small room, and I was like waiting, like 15 people for 1 hour, about an hour, and suddenly people start to chant and very noisy. He was coming, Chico, and when he entered the room, it was the first time that I felt that I was in the presence of pure love. I only felt that many years after with Guruji, in a different way, of course. But it was physical. That's such a love, and I couldn't stop crying just to be in the presence of that humble man, you know. Then he wrote a few things like psychographed. This kind of things. He's a channel to and he read a message. And then his adopted son said, you will have a chance to talk to him for very, very briefly, because he wants to bless everybody who's outside. And he was like 80 years old, very, very fragile. So I went to the line and I couldn't figure out what to tell him, you know? And then he was seated. When I got there, I kneeled, and I knelt, and I kissed his hands, and I said, Chico, I have nothing to say, just to thank you so much for everything you've done to my life through your books, through your teachings. Then he got my hand, he kissed my hands, and he pushed me by the head and said, my son, it's me who thank you for have listened to me in your dreams and have come to see me. Wow. And when he said that, I was and grabbed his arms and everything. It was, and then I realized, there are people who can actually know much more than we can imagine. I lived like this for many years, and then when I was like 22, 23, the second stage, I started to have a few dreams when this face would show up. Beautiful face of an Indian, and very common, I think. You must have heard a lot of experience like this, but it was my experience. I was dreaming, and then this face would show up, not telling anything, but a beautiful eyes, love pouring out of him, and I was, who's he? Like 1 year, like this. And one day I was in the shopping mall with a friend, and he said, I need to go to a bookstore to get a book. And I went with him, you can imagine, and I see a book, and in the cover, there was the Indian who was in my dreams. The book is Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda, and I saw that. I started to, what is this? Got the book, read it the first time like in 2 days, and everything completely changed, because I started to know about Indian philosophy, about meditation, about Kriya Yoga, about the saints, about everything. And it was beautiful. I looked for someone in his organization in São Paulo, was initiated in Kriya Yoga for one of his monks. After that, I went to US to study some English. As you can see, it didn't work out well.
No, it worked really well. What are you talking about?
But I went to United States in San Diego. Yeah. And he had
they have the center there in San Diego.
In Encinitas. Yeah. So I went to Encinitas, and I lived there like for 3 months, spending the day meditating. It was beautiful. And then the second stage, like Kriya, life, and about 6 years ago, I was feeling profoundly alone, like in my spiritual life. I couldn't, find someone to share. I didn't have a guide, a master, and everything. And I was in a bakery. I think I told you this story. I was in a bakery praying and in a kind of desperate way, like praying and suffering. Please give me something, send me something. I'm feeling alone, frustrated. Please. And I remember saying in my prayers, I know that in this 21st century, there is not such a thing as a living master. I don't have this kind of illusion, but send me something. It's okay. And I finished this desperate prayer, and I decided to go to my cell phone and out of nothing, I wrote Kriya Yoga. And then there's an advertising. A Kriya Yoga master was going to be in São Paulo, my city, the next day giving Darshan, which I had no idea what it was. Like, I thought it was like a lecture, something like this. Paramahamsa Vishwananda lecture, Darshan. And I took that as a sign. So, I go. That when I went to São Paulo, I first met you also.
Correct.
And it was amazing because, first of all, I felt very, very comfortable and at home with the music, with this. Once he appeared, my heart started to pump in a very autonomous way. I was not very nervous, but my heart, and then it was such a. And he started Darshan. And one question in particular came to me very often during all night. I decided to stay until the end. I'm going to be one of the last ones to have Darshan because I want to experience this.
And it takes hours and hours for people
and hours,
who are not aware.
Yes. Hours, like 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
And the question is he the one I've been waiting for?
Yeah.
Is he the one? And this thought. I went to the line, and the presence of him, amazing. And he asked me my name, and I said, it's Antonio. And he said, Antonio, why don't you ask me the question you've been asking yourself all night long? And I didn't even repeat entirely. I said, are you? Because if
he knows, then he already knows.
And the classic answer, what your heart tells you. Am I? And I said, for me, you always been. And he said, yes, I am. And when I was about to leave, I turned back and I said, am I ever going to see you again? And you have seen that thousands of years, thousands of times, many more than me. When you ask him something and he does that, like
he looks up.
Yeah. He looks up like and he said, sooner than you think. That's okay. Went back home, life starts again. And at that time, I was studying a doctorate in business. And a teacher called me and said, I just got a message from a colleague from another university, and he's offering me a position for one of my students. Would you be open to the idea of studying abroad for a while? And at that time, my life was established. I couldn't even consider going abroad. But somehow I asked, teacher, I don't think so, but where is it? Which university? Yeah. And she said, it's in Germany. And it's in Frankfurt. And I said, okay. And I already knew that he was in Germany. And then he says, I know it's hard for you to imagine change your life for 1 year, maybe 6 months, 1 year. But I have a small flat in Germany. If you want to stay there, you can stay so you can save some money. But the problem is it's not in Frankfurt. It's in a city next to Frankfurt, and it's called Wiesbaden. You have to live there.
Which is even closer to the
ashram.
It's
even closer to the ashram, right? 1 hour, 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And then, after meeting him, 1 month later, I was living in Germany, spent some time here, and then the journey began. And I think it summarizes a little bit this particular moment.
Sure. Beautiful. What's most shocking to me in all of this is still that your mother, after fighting with her, allowed you to get on a bus for 6-7 hours to go somewhere as a teenager.
I was already very independent, and so
it must have been, because I was thinking, if I had a fight with my mom, the next morning I get on a bus 7 hours to go somewhere. I don't know if she'd be okay with this. Yeah, no, amazing. And I think when you shared this about, for example, the dream with Shuk Xavier and then what he said to you, and then even the situation with Guruji as well, where you have this question and then he prompts it out of you, and it's just, I always wonder, what do people do with these stories? Just like, how can you hear something like this and then still just sit there and be like, nah, this is just some big cheating going on or whatever. I just think, yes. Because put yourself in your shoes, right? If I put myself in your shoes, I just think it would, at the very least, help me to reorganize my thoughts and my life a little bit.
Exactly.
My framework for living in reality has to include this whatever they are teaching, whatever they embody, because it's not normal that somebody can come to your dream 7 hours away without any prior contact, in a sense, have a conversation, invite you somewhere, you go there, there's thousands of people, and you have a small interaction, and he says, I'm glad that you came, and listen to the dream, whatever. Yes. I find these things to be, well, first of all, it's a great blessing that you get something as clear as that, because a lot of people have to interpret these dreams or like connect the dots to create a kind of message or sign, because it's not so clear.
Exactly.
So that's a great blessing.
It was a turning point.
Absolutely,
for sure.
Absolutely. And clearly you needed it, and it's really good. But I just think that people really, I would love to hear the rational explanation that people have for something like this, because for me it's like, good luck. Right?
Yeah,
but okay.
I can imagine something to come up with the mind to explain these kind of things. I mean, there is, they try, but I don't even know how to explain it.
I've heard arguments. I just find them very unconvincing. I find it more like you're showing me how much you don't want to accept what is obvious in your face, more than you're showing me like strong, rational arguments. But anyway, let's not go there.
Okay.
So you mentioned a couple of things that I want to maybe touch on, and that is that, first of all, your dissatisfaction with your business life, or just your life in general as a lawyer, and then a second time, I guess, when you were sitting there saying you needed a spiritual master, and that this was a frustrating time as well. Maybe if you could describe a little bit, what was the frustration in a sense, like, because to my understanding, you were doing well career-wise, like you were a successful lawyer, right?
Yes.
And so what try to unpack that for me. What was it that was really not fulfilling you?
Okay. Professionally speaking, at that time, it was all about money. And it's not that I think money is not important.
Sure, of course.
On the contrary, it helps a lot. But it was all about, I couldn't find any other reason to do what I was doing at that time, And as a lawyer, I was a litigation lawyer. So when people would come to me, it was to fight, sometimes it was ugly, and you had to deal with all that, and I wasn't happy. I think it was something from inside, and I was trying to look some way out. And when I did the coaching training, I realized that I could at least try. Of course, it was a risk. I was willing to take this risk to change my life. During many years, I couldn't make the same money that I did before, which was okay. I mean, it's the price I was paying for this transformation, but I'm glad I did. I mean, it was also a turning point to my life, because now I'm able to do something that it's meaningful. There is a purpose, a sense of direction. I feel that I can help, and that I can be of use to people. So it's so much more.
There's something in that I was just, as I was listening to you, I was thinking, being a litigation lawyer, right, and saying that you're fighting, and there's this energy, this intention often in the work. The fact that led you to sort of a professional frustration of some sort, and then now you're doing something that, even if you're earning less money, at least like as a coach, and helping people to communicate and all of this, like, you're helping people in a sense come together and to be more harmonious and to be more in tune. And it's like somehow that reflects on the level of values, because I often find, irrespective of the profession that you're involved in, if the profession or the lifestyle requires you to act out in a way that is against your natural intuitions or your values as a human being, like, you don't want to sow division, you want to sow unity, for example. I find it always an interesting, let's say, challenge, how people rationalize that inside, like, that I go to work where I'm gonna potentially be defending a liar or fighting someone, and just constantly be in this conflict nature, and then I'm not surprised that it leads to frustration. I'm not surprised that it leads to these sorts of things. And for me, that's one of the things I wanted to touch on today, which is, how can you help people, maybe through spirituality, become more aware that these are the real reasons why the people aren't feeling fulfilled. It's because there's an incoherence. It's not matching what we are inside with what we're doing outside.
Okay.
And this is somehow, I see that in that example that you gave.
Something changed, because when I was in the middle of the lawyer work, I felt exactly like this. I cannot be myself, or I cannot experience a higher sense of purpose doing what I'm doing. But afterwards, I was thinking, not always people can change professions, can change careers. It was very unique that after 15 years doing what I was doing, I managed to do that. And I meet and I know many people who are not fully satisfied with their external or professional life, and they cannot change because, like, they are 40s, 50s, in their 40s, 50s, they have families. They say, I cannot take the risk. I don't have
the financial flexibility.
Exactly,
like this.
Exactly. And what I felt is, of course, sometimes you cannot change, but if you are connected, you are established in the presence and established in God's presence and in your spirituality, you can make a difference even doing whatever you're doing. Because lawyers are part of the
That is true.
world, and there are so many nice people doing great things, and that changed a little bit. My perspective now is that although you find yourself sometimes in a situation that you don't appreciate much externally, you still can have a difference and do the better you can. And especially, and I think this is going to be a subject of our conversation, to be in the world, to do things, and at the same time have your spirituality untouched by
Let's go into that. So let's play that scenario. Somebody comes to you where they are frustrated in their work life. They don't feel fulfilled, but they cannot change, right? Mm-hmm. But they're still coming to you for some advice or for some coaching or something like that. What would be your way of addressing that?
I mean, as a coach, we don't give any advices. It's very interesting because we differentiate the mentor and the coach. Mm-hmm. The mentor is someone who has the experience in the field the executive works, and through his experience, he shares his experience and maybe gives some advice for the person. It's not what I do, because I work with people in business, like in industrial field and AI field and how can I say, service and technology, and I don't know about their business,
Yeah.
So my perspective is to listen to them and ask good questions, and make them reflect and make them make their own decisions, because I believe they have the resources inside themselves to find a way. Mm-hmm. But one of the first approaches is to find a purpose, to find where he wants to be in the future, or where he sees himself in the future, according to his values, what's important for him, and how we can approximate the purpose of him with his current situation, to see if it's possible to change, find a path through this, or maybe look for another organization or whatever, Yeah. But I think this idea of having a purpose it's very important. I usually tell them this thing: when you go to a foreign country, and you have to go to a place and you have no idea how to get there, you rent a car. The first thing that you do is to connect to the GPS, right, in the car.
Correct.
And what do you do first? And they say, I type the address. And once the address is typed and you play, the map shows up. So many people try to find what should I do, what way, what's my purpose, Guruji, what I'm here for, what's my purpose, what's my dharma,
yes.
And
that famous question.
Exactly. And in my perspective, find first what's really important for you, what's your purpose in this life, and when you have this very, very clear, the map is going to show up, because you're going to be open to this. You're going to be looking for opportunities to manifest that in your life. Somehow it's very, very interesting how things work. Once you know where you want to get, you want to reach, the map shows up. Another example that I like was, I was very young. I was invited to a cruise, a party cruise. So the idea is 2,000 young youngsters in a cruise for 3 days, partying all day and night long. And I said, oh,
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Let me call and get some information. And I called them and I said, okay, that's nice. How it works? Oh, it's going to be concerts and party and everything. And the ship leaves the port of Santos, which is near São Paulo. And I said, okay, for 3 days. And where does the ship go? And the man answered, what do you mean? And I said, yeah, where does the ship go? Man, I don't know. It doesn't matter. What matters is the party. And I said, okay. And I think some people live their lives like this, in a party, and not party meaning,
Yeah. The short-term enjoyment thing, not really knowing where we're going.
Exactly. And going through life like this. And so I think this is a very
good analogy
and important idea to have. And I think this is one step.
Yeah.
Talking about spirituality, because what I feel, and I would love to listen from you as well, is that this is important until a certain point, and until surrenders come. Okay. Because when surrenders come, I think we are not that concerned about the destination anymore. We are simply living life moment by moment, opened, and absolutely trusting God. Of course, doing your part, doing whatever you have to do professionally, with your family, in the ashram. You do what you have to do, but the sense of concern and goals, and it lowers so much. If you talked to me a few years ago, I would have so many goals, so many strategies. I would love to have control over everything. And I feel that changed profoundly, And that reminds me one episode with Guruji and another spiritual teacher that I'd like to mention, Krishnamurti. Just before he passed away, they asked him, what is the difference of you from us? And he said, the difference is that I don't mind what happens. It's not that I don't care, but I don't mind. Everything is perfect the way it is. And when I heard that, okay, but that wasn't clear. And after I heard Guruji in a satsang, someone asking, what is the difference between the saint and us? And he answered, the difference is that the saint, they don't worry. They don't worry. That was they don't worry. They're surrendered, So, but I don't get to this point with my clients usually.
Yeah, I get that. But it's interesting what you were talking about. Purpose being a step one, in a sense, to help guide these people, like the GPS example, and then at some point, it almost no longer matters. And it's a funny transition how someone goes from that boat environment of just, let me enjoy the present moment and let me, chase what brings pleasure to my mind, to my eyes, to my ears, to my touch, to my taste. Like, you just want to create the most pleasant environment possible. But often you don't have any destination, and eventually you start to hit a brick wall, in a sense of like, and then what? And then what, right? So, okay, purpose helps guide a person, helps focus a person, helps take the person to something that is more fulfilling. But it's funny how often that chase for purpose is joined by this desire to control,
exactly.
Which you said, right? People want to be in control of their lives. People want to be in control of so many things that we know. I think deep down we know we can't control 100% of it. We all know. But the feeling is almost like, but if I can at least control 80%, that's already way better than 20%.
Exactly.
And so you aim for 100 knowing you're going to land somewhere around 60, 70, and that's okay. But the thing is that there's still that 20, 30, 40% that you're not controlling. And when that stuff happens, no matter how much in control you thought you were, you're still going to feel the same disappointment, the same frustration that you did when you had 0%.
Mm-hmm.
And so the thing is that I feel like most people, they want to trust in something. They want to surrender and to let go, because it's so tiring to try to control everything and fail.
Mm-hmm.
So they want. But most people don't find anything trustworthy, anything reliable. They look at life itself and they're like, I can't trust life. You know, and I do think that is a big difference between the saint and the regular person. I agree 100% about the worrying, but I often feel like, and I've spoken to people who come with this kind of issue, and I want to tell them, just trust. Like, this is not random. Everything is, in some sense, supervised by someone who wants the best for you, really.
And knows much better than you.
Yes. But I also, as I'm wanting to say that to the people, I feel like the barrier to them believing me is that they haven't had any experience of that. They haven't had reasons to trust that. And so I think there's sometimes like this divide that I need to bridge, that I somehow need to connect them. And the way I do it is of course by sharing. Like I share about my experiences, I share about my life, I share about the experiences of others, and I hope to inspire people to at least let go a little bit more of that fear, of those concerns. Because it's really, I find it, and I'm curious to hear what you think about this, people's transformations don't happen from 0 to 100, from one day to the next like this. Like, if in my experience, it's a gradual process. People gradually let go of certain mindsets and gradually adopt new mindsets. And there's always some traces of the old you that you still find under the carpet sometimes. And the new you starts to flow in sort of bit by bit. And sometimes it can be faster, sometimes it can be slower, you know. But generally speaking, I think people are a little too expectant. Like, I've gone to a coach or I've gone to a spiritual master, I've heard something wonderful and wise, or I've discovered something about myself through their help, and now I've changed. And then they get shocked when 5 days later they spot inside of them an old habit or an old way of seeing or doing things, and they start to panic. That I find a lot in the spiritual path, that people don't know how to manage change, in a sense, like expectations especially, how to do that. And I think it comes to the conclusion that I currently have, that there are many problems and many challenges in the spiritual life, or introducing spiritual elements into your life. But I find that one of the biggest is expectations.
Oh, yeah.
It's psychologically, at least, the one thing that can destroy you on a daily basis. Like, if you just think your life should look different.
Comparison, expectations, and this kind of things. Yeah.
It's all very, very interconnected.
Yes. Yes.
I want to touch on something that you said.
May I just say something before, because you said something that I've been thinking about lately, and you know, I usually think that we go through processes in our spiritual life, and there is this inevitable phase or process that we go through, which is purification. And I call the long path, when you try to become a better person, when you work with your values, your moral values, with your behavior, you work with the mind and thoughts, and you try to understand your emotions, your reactions, and it's a very exhausting and hard work, because you have to gradually, every single day, stay aware and see how the patterns manifest, and you know, and everybody has to go through this process, right? But it sometimes is very frustrating, as you said. You cover your head, and then your feet are covered, and you cover your feet, and then your head, and you see, now I'm good at this, and then suddenly, and you know, when you see, and oh my God, when I'm going to do or to be better. And I believe that at one point, after many incarnations maybe of this gradual and hard work, you're gonna have to count on grace. You're gonna have to say, look, I've been trying everything. Really. You know that. I've been trying, and I've been struggling, and I've been, you know, but by myself I can't. And please, I need your help, and you open, and you surrender, and you are there, and you live life in this state of openness, and say, do what, but really meaning, do whatever you want. And at this moment, the transformation one day from another can happen.
Okay, agreed.
Because it doesn't come from your efforts, from your personality. It comes from something much higher, and then suddenly you are in another place. And I've been thinking that this is a step or a change that might occur, hopefully for all of us.
No, you're right. Actually, I agree with you. It reminds me of a conversation I had with Guruji. As he was speaking, I was just like, oh yeah, I had a conversation with him about this. I asked him, why do people not change? Like, because we were talking about a specific individual that was very frustrating, because people sometimes, they have all the tools, they have all the talent in the world, and for some reason it never clicks. Like, it never comes together in a way that gets you the results that you think that the person should be having, or whatever. We were talking about, and Guruji said, you can't really change people. They have to change themselves. And he was talking about it from the perspective of this first phase until you reach your limit, so to speak. Like, and I was saying, but then what am I doing? I try teaching people. I'm a teacher. I try to educate, and I try to help and guide people to be better versions of themselves. And it's interesting what you said earlier, that you ask good questions so that the people can, in a sense, find their own understandings or whatever. And they have the tools. They have the tools already inside them. He agreed with that, Guruji, and he was saying how, the most powerful realizations are the ones that you come to by yourself, that you, in a sense, recognize that nobody had to tell you, and you had to believe on faith-based, but because you actually realized it. And so he said, you have to bang your head against the wall 10 times sometimes to realize that something has to change. And then you make the real like conviction and decision to change. But even then, part of that sincere effort to change is that you eventually realize that you are hitting your head on a wall and you cannot do more. It is like you've done everything you can. And at that point, yes, you have to surrender. You have to say, I've done what I can. God, you do the rest. Yeah. What else can I, but you genuinely recognize that you don't do it. You see, this is the funny thing, how most people do. They have the capacity to do this much, and they do this much and say, God, please do the rest. But really, it's just because I want to be lazy, God. Just help me be lazy, right? And Guruji, I've never seen him react positively to this kind of thing, right?
Of course.
He mocks it. He says, come on, but if you really give your maximum and you recognize that you're hitting your limit repeatedly, the call for grace will be sincere. I mean, when you were talking about your desperate prayers, in a sense, like this feeling of, I really need this because I'm at a situation where I don't see what I can do personally to change this further. I believe then, yes, grace does come into our lives. And there's so many stories of that, how it happens. And then I do agree with you that transformation can happen from one day to the next. But something that Guruji has always been emphasizing the last few years is there's almost two parts of your life, and they are connected 100%, and they are become a good human being and then become a spiritual being, so to speak. And some people try to shortcut this. They skip the become a good human being part because they're like, oh yeah, that's very
not possible,
basic and normal. It's like, I'm going to become very spiritually elevated very quickly, and I'm going to dive into my practices, into my philosophies and whatever. And when you try to shortcut this path, it never works.
Totally.
It never works.
Yes.
And so this part of becoming a good human being,
it's a homework we all have to.
That's the one where I feel like it's more transitional and gradual, right?
Yes.
It's not from one day to the next.
Exactly.
I'm now humble.
For sure.
I just decided to be humble and now I'm humble. Like, good luck. Again, that is not my experience. But,
exactly.
I have a question for you. So obviously you are a devotee of Guruji and you do this coaching work. What is how can I put it? The temptation versus the resistance, in a sense, to include Guruji's stuff or Guruji's teachings or Guruji himself into the work you do. Because I know some people who work in similar fields and they say there's a conflict inside of them sometimes because they want to give them what they really have, which is like, I'm not happy just because I've organized my life a little bit. I'm really happy because I have Guruji in my life. But they know that there's only so much this person is really ready to receive, and there's only so much that this working environment allows for. So how do you navigate this somehow?
Okay. I'd like to go back a little bit to create a perspective, because until a few years ago, to imagine to bring this kind of subject to coaching or to trainings was unimaginable, like impossible. And the HR people, they would say, don't bring any of this stuff, because in the audience, you're going to find like people from every corner of the world, and also from different perspectives, religions,
every religious and cultural background.
Exactly. And if you say something that they feel it's not appropriate, we ruin everything. So don't bring it. And a change has happened in the 90s, maybe. Very interesting. Google realized that first people were much more anxious, depression, and burnout. And their minds and they have people who work on computers, programming, and they need them focused, and they couldn't, because, cell phones and our attention being constantly requested, and our attention, more and more, and they couldn't find themselves in a place of space and calmness and focus. So they got a HR employee and said, go outside, gather the best people in the world, and create a program for us on mindfulness and neuroscience. Mm-hmm. The idea of neuroscience is not to bring philosophy or religion, but to explain the impact of mindfulness in your brain. And they create a very successful program called Search Inside Yourself, which is nice. Google search, Search Inside Yourself, which was a success. And they introduced meditation into the workplace. And they got like Buddhist practice, Hindu practice, but they labeled in a different way.
Of course, repackaged.
And repacked. They found a way to explain how our brain responds to that. So when they ask, what's in it for me? Okay, you're going to be more focused. You're going to have more space. You're going to control your mind better. You're not going to be so anxious thinking about the future or stuck to your past, depression and everything. So it was a very significant step into this world. And now I'm able to do this kind of work with executives, which has been very nice, because they suffer a lot. The work environment sometimes is heavy, moral harassment and very long hours of work, like workload, very heavy. And they don't have time for the family sometimes. Work balance doesn't exist. Life-work balance doesn't exist. And they are anxious and they are depressed. And this kind of work helps a lot. Okay. But when you ask me if it's possible to bring Guruji's teachings to the organization, I think we are still far away from it. Yeah. They don't allow it. But what happens once you do these programs of mindfulness, and they start to realize that they're not their minds, that they can observe the mind, they can see the craziness of the mind without getting pulled into it, and they find this space of presence, something changes. And somehow they are connected with the more profound perspective of their personality, sometimes even their souls. And they look for you and say, is there something more?
That's just what I was going to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. And at this moment, you are allowed, because they asked you can bring, if you want to know what is my path, I'd like to introduce to you. And through the years, I had the opportunity to talk to many people, and I've trained like 15,000 people present in person.
Yeah.
Like 50, but it's amazing. Like 50 people that now follow Guruji, and if they don't follow, they study. They
have some contact.
Yeah, exactly. They're in a much better place.
I love that. I love that very much, because I think a lot of people need to learn from that example. And the reason I say that is because I really understand the desire to bring Guruji into everything you do, right? And to really push him into whatever profession you have. But the truth is that you need to be grounded in the sense of understanding what is appropriate at what time. And sometimes the best way you can bring Guruji to them is just by your own example.
Exactly.
And I think people really underestimate that and they really undervalue that. One of the things I've always disliked about religion is the whole preaching element of it, the missionary element of it, where when they go and almost impose religion on someone, right? I had a conversation with Hare Krishna recently. We were talking and we had a great conversation, and then we were in private talking as well. And I said, help me understand, genuinely, I was genuinely open to this, help me understand the psychology or the rationale behind going out in the streets and distributing books to people, because I've always found that to be quite an aggressive move. Like, not that you have a book stand and somebody can come to you and ask for a book, that I have no problem with, but that you go and almost force it onto people, right? And when we talked about it, and I think it was a very productive conversation, but the point stands that I've always disliked that stuff, and I always find that there are more intelligent ways to represent what you are and to share what you have. And I remembered there was a devotee who was a yoga teacher, and he was a relatively successful yoga teacher for quite some time, and then became a devotee of Guruji and started at every yoga class talking about Guruji and pushing towards Guruji, because the person was so passionate about Guruji, but started getting less and less students, right? And then the person spoke to Guruji, what should I do? You know, I teach yoga. Should I talk about my Bhakti path and you and all of this? And Guruji said, no, it's your job. Like, recognize that the audience isn't coming to you to hear about me. They're coming to learn yoga. So teach them the yoga, but do it in a way that leaves the door open for them to come and know more if they want to. Let them, so be inviting, be open. You can speak from your perspective in the sense that, you know, I have this and I do this and it works for me, but, you know, do little hints and drop little seeds and have a way that is intelligent and grounded and allows people to come through. So you describing it in this way, you could say it's the limitations are almost like policy enforced because the companies have these policies. But I think it's also an intelligence thing, that strategy thing almost.
Of course.
And people really do gravitate to exemplary people. Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita. Don't disturb the minds of the ignorant, so to speak, if you're in a position of knowledge. Rather inspire them by your example.
By your presence, by your energy.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
You know, one door that is one of my favorites to bring spirituality and Guruji is when they are suffering and we come across the subject of resilience.
Yeah.
So they come and say, you know, I cannot change my life right now. I'm in this project, or I have this kind of leader, a very abusive one, and I must go through this. So help me to develop resilience. For those who are not acquainted, resilience is this ability of suffering this kind of pressure and come do not break.
Yes,
and
to persevere through these situations
and come to this place. You know, you bend, but you come back. And I bring them the concept of resilience, which is the person who has resilience, they really believe and feel that they can overcome life's challenges. And also they believe that they're worthy of love and happiness. And when I talk to them about this ability of finding yourself in a position that you can face the challenges, you know, we talk about the strategies. And I say, you know, some researchers say that when you have a profound faith, then when you open yourself to something bigger than yourself, it helps a lot in this process. By the way, how is your position in this? And they sometimes bring, no, I believe in God and I have this kind of faith. And I said, go deep down in this way because it helps a lot in these dark moments. And sometimes they ask, how about you? Do you have any? And then we can exchange. And what is this? And how is this path? And then something beautiful beautiful happens. And this is first stage. And also when I say that a resilient person really believes that they deserve peace and happiness, I usually, after some talk, and I say, you deserve because it's your true nature. Because, this representation that you have, like the mind, the body, the emotions, the sensations, they come and go. But deep down, there is a part of yourself. I don't talk about reincarnation, but I say deep down inside yourself, there's something that does not come and go, that is always at peace. And if you were able to connect with that, you're going to realize that sometimes, even though you're facing challenges and your external life is very messy, inside you're anchored, you are established in something much bigger than yourself. And he has said, how can I do that? How can I access this presence or this part of myself? And I said, well, there are many ways, but the one I know is that you have somehow to calm down the stormy of your feelings and thoughts and emotions and everything. And one good way to do that is through meditation. And then and it evolves. And he said, beautiful. There's any technique. I love Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yoga, come. And then...
Beautiful.
Yeah.
No, it makes all the sense in the world to me. I think I was going to ask you actually, on what basis do the people come to this conclusion that I'm worthy of love and all these kind of things? Because people do believe that, and I'm happy when they do, but there are different ways to conceptualize this. And like, I was talking recently to somebody and they were saying how we were talking about rights, and they were like, I should have the right to this and the right to that. And it was awkward conversation. It was very worldly in some sense. But then I was saying, it's funny because I don't know if rights is the right language. Like, we have a nature that we are who we are. There's like, the sun doesn't have the right to shine. It just shines. Like, it's a weird concept. And I was saying, we are parts of God. We're souls, right? Everything he is, we are, in a sense. Like, and he is bliss incarnate. We are happy people. At the core, we are happy people. And we've just covered that happiness with so many layers of stuff. It's just stuff. And you need to just sometimes pull back the layers and see what you have inside of yourself already, right? And the thing is that a lot of people are so afraid of what they will find when they start pulling back the stuff. Because sometimes beneath the first layer, there's an even more painful layer.
Exactly. And
an even more painful layer. And then when you pull them all, you have this blissful layer, the beautiful layer. But the resilience that you need to persevere through the many uncomfortable layers until you get there, that's something that I have 100% attributed to my spiritual path. Like the ability to face the hardest parts of myself and then continue to push through. And I realized, why is it that I have this bravery, or whatever you want to call it, this resilience to keep going? And to me, it is because I have an embodied example or an embodied person like Guruji who looks at me and says, because you can do it. It's just that encouragement that says, I know you can. Keep going. Like, don't give up. And sometimes just having someone who believes in you like that.
Of course.
People have often asked me, Swami, what drives you? What motivates you? And sometimes I wake up with one answer, sometimes I wake up with another. But one of the answers is this. What motivates me is to discover the version of me that he sees that I don't see.
Oh man, this is so nice. And this is one of the main principles of high leadership. Having the luck to find someone. I'm not even talking about Guruji,
sure.
But having someone who really believes in you and finding potential where you sometimes can't see yourself.
That's awesome.
Yeah, let me share something with you. A lot, many years ago, a doctor from Harvard started a study, and he gathered like 32 youngsters, called them and took them to his school and said, look, we at Harvard, we researched all over the country and we selected these boys. And they are the elite. They are the they have the best conditions to be awesome in the future. They have intelligent, emotional intelligence. They have IQ. They have the upbringing, the perfect upbringing. They're special. So what we, Harvard, want to ask you, school, is don't accept mediocrity. Mediocrity. Don't accept less than what they can offer. Look at them and see potential, because we, Harvard, are saying these guys are special. And it was the longest study in Harvard history. They looked at these boys for more than 23 years, from school, high school, university, and and the results were amazing. Like 91% of them went to an Ivy school, Ivy University, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and many of them became like very successful, not only as entrepreneurs or executives, but also as human beings, and
achieved great things.
Great things. Yeah. After that many years, he released a paper. This kind. His name is Robert Rosenthal, and he wrote a paper, telling about the studies, and he surprised everybody, saying, "Now it's time for me to say something. Those boys were chosen randomly. No IQ test, no emotional intelligence test. The only thing that we wanted is as a sample of the society. So we had white people, black people, Asian. We had people, boys or girls, being raised by their mothers, and other ones being raised by their fathers, some of them being raised by both. We had poor people, middle class. We had a sample of what's the society. And what explains these wonderful results that they have it's our conclusion that from the tender or early age, they found people who believed in them, who looked at them and said, I'm not gonna accept this because I know there is more. And that makes all the difference in the leadership, because if you have someone who did something wrong, you can have two approaches. You are a piece of you don't work properly, I don't know why I hired you, and this, and you low their self-esteem and this sense of value. Or you can say, you're going to say that the work is not good. Of course you have to do this as a leader. It's not getting a bad job and say, oh, okay, it's good.
Wonderful,
No, come on. That's not right, that's not good. And I can accept that. Because first, the work is not proper, but because it doesn't match what you can offer. There's more. So I want to know, what was the problem? What is your difficulty? How can I help you? And I'm sure you're gonna be able to fix this and get a better job. So this is a perspective of leadership very, very important, and having Guruji as a mentor is something amazing.
I agree with you 100%. In this, I've had leaders at my sort of journey through Bhakti Marga, even working at different departments at different times. And one of the persons that I had for a lot of years at the beginning was Swami Kuru. And Swami Kuru, he's one thing that everybody knows him for, is he's extremely positive. So even sometimes, in my opinion, irrationally positive, but he's just like positive all the time, right? And so that was it. Even if I would mess up or make mistakes or whatever it was, there was always this spirit of like, we can turn it around, like, and it can be better, and it can be this, and it can be that. And I think there's this encouraging element is really, really important. But when you believe that it's genuine, that someone looks at you and they're like, I genuinely believe.
Of course.
I'm not playing a game here. Like, you can do better, I believe in you.
Of course.
No, where they look at you in the eyes and really say, I know that you're capable of great things, and I want to help you achieve them. Some fire lights inside of you.
Exactly. And when you see someone as an Atman, as a soul, and you see that actually there is this potential, it's easier, because sometimes the personality of the other shows the other way around. He does everything wrong. Yeah. He doesn't have the proper education, and you see, oh my God, this is a mess.
Atma is very hidden in there.
But if you are able to see it and believe that there's something that can turn it around, it's nice.
But I mean, the most inspirational thing I've seen is Guruji, because he takes everyone.
Exactly.
Like sometimes the people around him, I'm just like, Guruji, sometimes I think you need to filter these people out a bit more. And it's from my judgmental position, right? Because I see things in a very limited way. And then I look at some of these people and I'm just like, really? Really? Like, how long until that person becomes like useful or becomes a good, like 20, is this a 20-year project, 50-year project? But amazingly, because of his unrelenting belief, it becomes a 5-year project. It becomes something just like, they start one place where you think there's no roadmap to this person becoming something better and different. And amazingly, they do. And it's because Guruji looks at them and he's like, I know every one of you has an Atma, and so I know every one of you is actually happy and fully competent and fully everything. How do we unlock it? It's just, it's a project. How do we unlock it?
Oh man, this is amazing. Yeah.
And then it's like he's doing that at the highest level, right? Of seeing that, like, say, purest part of you. And I think me as a servant, as a representative, whatever, you in your professional field, we are, in a sense, trying to do the same thing at a lower level, perhaps, but it's the spirit that is the same. The spirit is not different.
Exactly. I would say that the lower level is to work in terms of belief system.
Yeah.
Because I usually, when I get people hurt or very frustrated and feeling incapable of changing, I usually ask them the question, do you think there's possible to live life without facing grief, without facing pain, without meeting people that treat you badly, without seeing injustice? I mean, is there any possibility of going through life without experience these kind of things? And the answer I got so far is no. All of us, sometimes we experienced pain, suffering, grief, injustice. Right. People tried. And I have always been interested in this question, what makes some people face this kind of challenges and rise, and some of them be stuck to this and have a miserable life. Yeah. And when I was studying law, I had a very powerful experience that showed me some lights to that, if I can share.
Please, go ahead.
I worked in a very famous jail or prison in São Paulo. It's called Carandiru. Where they put the most dangerous criminals in Brazil at that time. The final, the 80s, like 89, 90, 87. I was already in the law school and I was working there. And my job was to visit these kind of criminals and work with them, like seeing if there's something to be done, new judgment, new if there was something to do. And I met many criminals. And all of them were pretty much the same. They're very, how can I say, brutal, and they couldn't speak properly. They used the language of the crime, like, and they were very, not educated at all. But I met someone there. I can forget his name because it's the same as mine, Antonio. And this guy had the whole criminal code in his curriculum, like everything.
He's done every crime imaginable, right? An expert criminal.
Man, everything.
Right.
Homicide and he was not a raper.
Yeah, sexual offender.
Sexual offender. You're gonna know. And the difference between him and the other inmates is that he was very educated. His cell was very clean, books all over. He would ask the people who worked in the prison to read the newspaper. So you would go to have a conversation with him. He would speak about arts, culture, international relations, politics. He knew about the penal code much more than myself, And and for almost a year I visited that guy, and I said, how come he's here? He could be anywhere else. And after 10 months, I couldn't hold myself, and I asked him, Antonio, let me ask you something. I've been visiting you, and you're such an intelligent guy. You're such a talented guy. Why are you here? Why you've chosen this path? And his face changed, and he looked at me and said, you want to know why? I said, if you can share. Well, I was born in a very poor place. My father was an alcoholic, and from the beginning, he like beat me almost to death. He broke my teeth, he broke my bones, he broke my arms. And after 4 years beating me, my brother and my sister, and my mother, he decided it was not enough. So he started to abuse sexually from me and my brother for 5 years. Every single day, he would abuse me. Who are you, who never experienced such a things, to tell me that I could be or do something different? I'm just offering to society what I had. Had no choice. I had no choice.
No choice.
No choice. You know, who are you? The only people that I like is my mom, who passed away, and my brother that I haven't seen for 10 years. Other people, I don't like it. Even you, who is here to help me, I don't like you. And I left this conversation very, very touched, very sad, you know, because I'm talking about his experience in 1 minute. He shared with me for half an hour,
Right.
and you could see the pain, the having your father, the one you most, you
Look
know,
up to,
and doing this kind of things. And I don't know why I left this conversation with the decision, I'm going to find his brother. Because when he mentioned his mom and his brother, for the first time I saw some sparkling in his eyes. His eyes were very dark, very, very opaque, very dark, very much suffering and anger. But at that moment, something, and I said, man, I'm going to try to find his brother. But remember, the 80s, there is no Google,
Yes,
you
of
know,
course.
you had to go to the
phone book.
The phone book, almost impossible. But okay, we asked another prisons to send us their books, their state books, and we tried to look. Almost a year later, a miracle. Someone calls to someone with the same last name, and we found his brother.
Wow.
They passed me the phone number. I called him, and I said that Antonio was in jail. He started to cry. I said, man, I must see my brother. I haven't seen him for 10 years. And he decided to go to São Paulo. And then I said, let's meet for a coffee, and we go together to the prison. And then I'm there having a coffee, waiting for Antonio's brother. And suddenly someone turns the corner and comes in my direction. And when I saw it, I thought, man, I'm dead. Antonio left the prison, is coming here because he was coming. And my heart, and the guy came and said, you were Antonio, right? It was his brother, twin.
Wow.
Identical. Like Swami, I was seeing Antonio.
Yeah.
And he sat and we started to have a coffee, and I was like, without the words, and he smiled and said, we are very similar, me and my brother. I said, man, you're not similar, you're the same. And he started to share his life, married, 2 daughters, a manager of Nestlé. Nestlé. Very nice life. And my brain couldn't deal, because for 1 year I was seeing him as one of the most dangerous criminals of Brazil. And after 20 minutes, I looked at him and said, man, how did you do it? Have you gone through all the challenges that Antonio went? And said, you were asking me if I was abused, if I was beaten up. Yes, of course. Sometimes even more than Antonio, because I was trying to protect him, and my father would beat me even more because I was hiding him. And I did the same question. How? Why? How you're in this place right now? And his answer was very illuminating, because he said, between the event, the trauma, the people who disappointed you, and your answer or your response, there is a space. And this space is the supreme possibility of the human being, to choose what to do with that, how interpret that, what kind of belief you're going to build from that experience. And mine was, I'm going to be the father my father wasn't. I'm going to be the husband he wasn't. I'm going to offer to my family something that I've never had. I'm going to use this as something to encourage me to the future. So the belief system was completely different.
Right.
And from that, the actions, the habits, and the outcome also completely different. So we all have beliefs. All of us. You have, I have, because you get that from experiences we had, people we met, the books we read, the travels we made. All of that make us have some beliefs. Beliefs understood as a very powerful way of seeing something.
Yeah.
Like, I believe this is this, and I don't listen to something different because it is like this, you know? Mm-hmm. And what we realize is our beliefs determine the way we act, you know? Mm-hmm. Even though it's not in our best interest sometimes, mm-hmm. but it's our belief. Mm-hmm. I was raised with my father saying, everybody who makes money is somehow guilty of something. There is no innocent money. There is no innocent money, son.
It's a very Brazilian thought.
You know?
Yes.
There is no innocent money. There is no innocent wealth, you know? Mm-hmm. And when I started working and trying to improve my condition, getting some money from my work, every time I was on the verge of getting something, somehow it didn't work out. I couldn't. Because internally, I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be the dishonest guy that my father. And it took me a long time to deconstruct that belief. And once it was deconstructed, finally I could have some return, some success. Yeah. So this is very important. And when I work with people, sometimes they have a very fixed opinion about something, and it's not in their best interest.
Yeah.
So I question the belief system. I don't say you're wrong, because it only is strength their beliefs. Yeah. But I say, you're saying this, it's always like this. Do you know anyone who's not like this? And then they gradually start to think, and maybe they change. So it's something that I work with people, trying to help them to improve.
It's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing. And, you know, makes you think.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things that I've heard so many times from people because look, as a Swami, I have my duties towards Guruji and my own sadhana and all of this, right? But a lot of what I do is also just conversations with people, free therapy, whatever you want to call it, just talking, trying to help people through their things, right? And I cannot tell you how many times I've heard from people, it's just how I am. It's the way I am. And they say it. They don't mean it as an excuse. They believe it. They believe that they are something that cannot be changed.
Belief system, yeah.
This is their personality. This is how they've been raised. This is their mindset. And they want me to confirm that for them, because then they have an eternal excuse for everything. It's, it's just how I am, it's true that I'm a bit confrontational. It's true that I'm a bit this, I'm a bit that, or I'm impatient, or I'm emotional, but it's just how I am, right? Yeah. And I've always felt like we're so quick to define ourselves, exactly, to limit ourselves.
And others.
Yes, of course, as you have to. Because if you're like that, then others have to be also. If they're free and malleable, then you're something less somehow. And that doesn't work for the ego. So that Antonio in prison, how firmly he has convinced himself that he had no choice. Exactly.
Those events shaped them in a way that he had no choice.
And it's like, I'm without a doubt, I feel sorry for him. And there's clearly those events influenced him. And he has an incredible challenge in front of him to overcome that. And the fact that his brother did it is amazing, phenomenal. But still, the desire to excuse yourself, to justify yourself to yourself by saying, it's just how I am.
Exactly. Right? And and sometimes you use that to justify an action or something like this, but many times you're acting against your best interest. You're doing something that you see how that hurts your relationships, your success, your happiness, and somehow you still think that you cannot do anything about it. And this kind of deconstruction is very sometimes difficult, but once it happens, Wow, it's very powerful.
But you know, this is exactly what the Bhagavad Gita is. It's Krishna deconstructing Arjuna because Arjuna thinks the same.
Exactly.
And one of the most beautiful verses for me is when Arjuna says to Krishna, what is it that compels me to act against my best interest, as if compelled by something? There's something inside of me that makes me act against my intelligence. I have wisdom, and yet I do the opposite. What is it? And Krishna says it's desire. You have desires inside of you that drive you away from your intelligence, in a sense, right? And sometimes it's the desire to remain in your comfort zone. Sometimes it's the desire for so many different things that in the end don't help you and are not productive, right? And that's exactly what Krishna is doing, the whole Bhagavad Gita. There's a reason the Bhagavad Gita, I believe, works for everyone. If you get through the cultural, let's say, the names and the sort of setting and whatever else, and you just unpack what is really happening there.
It's amazing.
It's for everyone.
Exactly.
It really is.
And we can go further and talk about samskaras.
Yeah.
Sometimes we've been doing this for many incarnations.
It makes the problem even deeper in a sense, because it's not just one life. You understand his childhood.
Exactly.
It's like, okay, but what if you had the same experience for now 10 lives in a row?
Exactly. You know?
Fix that. You know?
There's a Fabio story. There's a story.
Fable
that I like very much. There was this scorpion, and he was in trying to cross a river. Do you know this story?
I know the story. Tell the story for the audience.
You like it? So he was trying to get through the river to the other side, and he couldn't swim. And he was looking around. Suddenly he sees a frog, and says, "Mr. Frog, so good to see you. Can you help me go through the river, go to the other side, because I don't know how to swim?" And I was thinking maybe I can get a ride, on your back. And the frog looked at him and said, "Are you crazy, man? Of course I'm not giving you a hide. You're a scorpion. You kill frogs. Of course not." But the frog was very intelligent, very well spoken, and said, "Come on, it's time for us to stop this kind of things. We must be friends. And I think it's good for you to have a scorpion friend in the forest. Please give me a ride. I want to see my mom." And then the frog said, "Okay." And he approached very cautiously. And the frog said, "Okay.
Get on my back."
Get on my back. And the scorpion, and then the frog, and it started swimming to the other side. And when he was in the middle of the river, he suddenly felt the
stinger,
the sting in your back, the poison coming to your system. He couldn't swim anymore, but he couldn't coordinate his movements. And he looked and saw the scorpion looking at him, and he said, "Man, why did you do that? I'm gonna die, but you're gonna die as well because you don't know how to swim. Why did you do that?" And the scorpion looked at him and said, "I know, man, but I'm a scorpion. That's what we
nature.
do. That's my nature." And they both died. And that represents all we've been talking about. Some people really believe that they're not able to change or something like this. And it's not true, definitely. And helping them through your work, and it's amazing because it's a big change in their lives.
I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think this is really touching on some really, really important and beautiful points. And I'd like to somehow leave it there. I think this point of like believing in what you could be and being open to change and having someone like Guruji. I mean, how you began your story with Shiku Xavier almost changing you in one way, Yogananda changing you in another way, Guruji changing you in another way, and now
definitely
change other people too, and helping them see that inside themselves also. And I think that's wonderful work. I really appreciate everything you shared.
Thank you.
Really touching stuff.
It was amazing to have this opportunity and to being with you here.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.